So that was our Scan Master. So all of the questions you have in regarding to how to get the best scan, how to scan in different difficult situations, Morten Røde, the Scan Master, will be your go-to guy. And then we also have Dominic Ellison. He is IT integration specialist. He has been working for 3Shape 8.5 years, and he is what we call our chief hacker. And I guess both the IT integration specialist and chief hacker title gives you an idea of what type of questions that you can get covered there. So Dominic, very nice to see you on the Geek panel. Then we also have Christian Hansen. So he's Trias project manager. He has been with 3Shape for 13.5 years, and he is our software overload. So now you know Trias software overload. Well, you can ask him all questions about the Trias software, and he will be able to answer them. So Christian, welcome on board on the Geek panel.
Thank you.
And then, because we have a silent Scan Master, we also invited our special geek, Jan Paulix. Normally Jan is teaching and developing all of our customer skills in the academy, doing a lot of training sessions. And we're so happy to have you on board as well, Jan, because I guess, and I can also see already on the questions coming in, that we'll need a person with clinical skills as well. And with Jan's 5 years with 3Shape, and also education as dentist, surgeon, and implantologist, Jan will be your guy when asking questions. And I guess maybe if some of you have a good idea to Jan's geek name, we would be happy to receive it. I don't think that Geek Guest is quite covering for Jan. Do you think so? Well, you can make a chat comment if you have a good name for Jan as well. And then, Marianne, I am your host, and I have been close to 2 years with the 3Shape now, and I have given myself the geek name Human, because amongst all of these very knowledgeable people with all of their skill sets, the only thing I can offer you today is to actually put your questions forward to let the specialists and geek answer those. So I hope there will come a lot of questions. We are definitely prepared to receive them. And I hope you all know that the Q&A, how it works, and I can see there are already questions coming in. But we already had some questions actually before when people signed up. So the first one would be, is it possible to make a scan on first client PC and finalize smile design on another one? So in this case, I guess it would be our chief hacker that could answer that. And the question is kind of in my terminology would be, I'm making a design on one PC, but then I move to another PC and I actually want to continue that same design. Dominic, is that possible?
Yeah, that is definitely possible. So if you have several devices within your same local network and you've installed our software with the client-server architecture, meaning that one of the devices functions as the server, hosting all information, the patient cases, etc., then you can access that information from any other device within the same network. So that means you could be scanning a patient on a dedicated scanning PC. And once you finish the scanning, the scan is saved on the server device, and your colleagues on the design station can pick up the design whilst you start scanning the next patient. So that's fully supported, and it's also being used in many places.
So it's definitely a yes to that question,
yes.
And very elaborate. Thank you, Dominic. And then we also had another questions, and I'll read directly from the questions. So difference in bite with and without an adjustment. So difference in the size between the teeth. I guess, Christian, this would be an answer that you could provide.
Hi. Yeah, I can try. I think didn't really understand the latter part of the question with the size of the teeth, but yeah. So in bite alignment, we have this adjust feature that basically will give you the option of scanning, or can outputting the case, you can say, with the unadjusted bite or the adjusted bite. And by that we mean it's adjust for intersections between the upper and lower jaw. And it's a little bit about preference and how you would like to continue to work with the scan, and your collaboration with your lab on which is the preferred option. And that's basically why we have both. Oh, you're muted.
In question in relations to also in the general scan, there's been a lot of questions here in regarding to trim, and there's a question, why is it still necessary to trim scans when working with AI, and that is artificial intelligence mode?
Yeah, so our AI scan, as you might know, it tries to remove all the, let's say, unwanted tissue, soft tissue, while you're scanning, to make it easier to get through a scan. But it's not like you say, super smart. So it will, and also we don't want to. We would rather be on the safe side. That means when you're done, you would probably still have some amount of soft tissue left that you prefer to remove manually. We of course hope to improve it in the future.
Sure. So then we also have some more praxis questions that are more clinical minded, and we, for instance, have a question while scanning multiple implants, and I guess, Jan, this would be a good question for you. Well, while scanning multiple implants on edentulous arch, is there any way to increase the depth of scanning so that it can capture complete scan body?
So welcome everybody. So the problem with scanning scan bodies on an edentulous arch is that there is a lot of highs and lows. So the soft tissue is on one level, and then we have the scan bodies sticking up. And then of course going over that area can be difficult for the scanner. So the good trick here is to add an extra scan step by actually scanning the scan healing caps first. So everything is low on the soft tissue level. By doing that, we can then remove one healing cap at a time and then scan the scan body in that position. That way we actually have one easy scan flow by scanning the healing caps first, everything in one level, and then we capture the scan bodies one after another, and it's very easy to grab them there when they are one at a time.
Okay. And I can also see there's, when talking about implant scanning, there's a question in regards to single implant scanning. So it's very difficult. Can you throw some light on that part?
Well, the problem we have here is often when we look at the model, and let's look only at the upper jaw here, is that we might have a very small area where we need to, let's say, fit both the scan body and the scanner and be able to see all the areas in one swipe. So the problem is to see on the side of the scan body at the same time as you're seeing the contact points and so on. So again, here adding the step of emergence profile that you set up in the order form. You scan first the teeth normally with the healing cap still in there. Then you remove the healing cap. You might want to lock the emergence profile so that one doesn't change and collapses. And then very easily you just fixate and place the scan body in the position. And from that you can scan it again. And then it's very easy to capture because then you only focus on the scan body itself. So the difficulty that was there because it was so tight and a little room, little space, suddenly became very easy to do. So remember to do it in 2 steps, one with the emergence profile and then with the scan body.
Okay, thank you. And Jan, very nice touch with the model as well. Thank you. So then we have a question in regards to, let me see, we have some edentulous questions, which could also be relevant here. Any tips and tricks for scanning long span edentulous ridge? So who would that be? That would be Jan again, maybe?
Yeah, I'd like to share with the other guys, but come on. So clinic rules. The thing with the edentulous is, of course, that then there are no, let's say, 3D objects to capture. There are no teeth, and everything we know about scanning teeth and intraoral has been on teeth so far. Suddenly now we want to scan long spans. We want to scan for all-on-4, for edentulous, for dentures, and so on. So we needed to come up with a new scan strategy that lets us do this with a very easy, let's say, workflow. So actually in a lot of webinars now being in the archive already and more coming up with tips and tricks with Morten and so on, we will be talking about edentulous scanning. And also, if you go back to the archive, you can find my previous webinar on also scanning on edentulous patients. And the trick here is to follow a new scan strategy where we don't focus so much on the teeth and the 3 swipes, but actually more on, let's say, the surface itself, how to capture the soft tissue in the best possible way. So it's a new way of scanning. The scanner picks it up very easily, but still you need to know how to do this and how to move the scanner around in the mouth. So I recommend the webinars, the upcoming with Morten and the old archived ones on scanning edentulous patients. There you will get a lot of videos and tips and tricks and so on.
And then actually there's a more in-depth question in regards to edentulous. So, and I guess maybe Christian, that would be a good question for you as well. So why is it so difficult to scan the lower jaw in this case?
I think it's very much to what Jan is saying, that when going edentulous, you're basically missing, you can say, what we can call landmarks. It's very hard for the software, for the scanner, to distinguish one piece of the jaw from the other, and that's basically just what makes it hard. On top of that, the lower jaw is have a tendency to be even harder than the upper, just because of how everything is. You have a lot of soft tissue in the lower jaw. But it is, of course, an area where we are continuously working to improve, for sure.
Super. So Christian, while we have you on the stage, there's one asking, why do some areas disappear while scanning in zoom mode?
Yeah, good question. They're for sure not meant to disappear when scanning in zoom mode. It is something we see occasionally. The main problem is that when you're scanning in zoom mode, you're really focusing on a very small amount of surface, and that can increase the chance of some small errors occurring, and that might be what's causing it. In general, we only recommend using zoom mode for some limited areas and hard to reach areas where you first trim the area you want to scan, or at least part of the area, and then you scan in zoom mode.
Super. And then we have a question which is very nice from one of our colleagues actually. What happens if I do not post-process my scan?
Yeah, I think, yeah. Yes, so post-processing is a vital part of the scanning process. And in many cases, it will just happen automatically, even though you don't do it manually. For example, if you're sending a case to a lab, then the post-processing will be taken care of while you're sending, before you're sending. At the same as if you have Trias Design Studio or Implant Studio or one of our other, say, in workflow applications, then it will also happen automatically. But if you're scanning a case that you plan on using later on, and you don't have a specific need for it here now, it's still very important to remember to post-process, and then you have to do it manually. Otherwise, you risk that the original data files will be lost in the future, and then basically, worst case, your scans are lost.
Sure. So I can see there are a lot of questions coming into our chief hacker, Dominic. And Dominic, can you just briefly sum up a lot of the questions coming in regarding file types, both the PLY and STL files?
Sure. So there have been a few questions on PLY and texture, if that is possible. And we're releasing a Dental Desktop update, I believe it's early May, where you will have the possibility to export your scans not only in STL format, but also into PLY format. And for those who don't know the difference, PLY format is kind of like an extension of the STL format, which has the same geometry, it has the same quality of your scans, but it also allows us to store the color information within the files. So if you have a program that is able to open PLY files, which you can find several freeware solutions online, then you actually have the possibility to view your scans with texture on it outside of the 3Shape software. So that's coming in May.
I actually think it is released.
It's already released, yes.
All right, even better. So you can do that now if you have the latest version installed. And then there were some questions about how to get STL files off your device. If you're, so let's say you have a Trias card or a Trias Move in your clinic and you want to somehow export your scans to an STL file and take them home with you for your home PC or for some other use. For Trias cards, you actually have a USB port at the bottom near the power cable, where you could put in a USB stick and then you could just export your STL files directly on the USB stick. That would be the easiest ways. For moves, guys, you have to help me out. I think there is no easy accessible USB port. I think the best way, what I would do there is I would have a different PC in my office where I would create a shared network folder. So I'm creating a folder on my normal desktop PC that I'm making available on the network. And then whenever I want to save an STL file on my Move, I basically save it directly into that folder. And then I can easily access that data on that other PC, either by USB stick or emailing it to myself.
Or you could, as you talked about earlier, actually do a small client server. So.
Yes, if you have, of course, a client server set up, then you could use any client device where you have access to the data and export it there. But if you're having a standalone installation on a Move, then I think the shared folder is the easiest way to go. And with the card, as I said, USB stick in the bottom near the power cord.
Yep.
Super.
Clicking through, if that was all. Yeah, I believe that was the things I went through so far.
Super. So when we also talk about all of this data and data export and import, there's also questions about backup. So talking about not the normal backup way, but also if it's backed up, how can they again find cases, for instance, by using the patient name? Is there an easy way to search your library, your saved data?
You mean, so we do have a backup functionality which allows you to take a full backup of the entire system. So when you go into the configuration page of Dental Desktop, there is a backup restore functionality. It does not create a searchable archive as such. So it will create a full backup of all your patient data, all your case data, and all your settings. And if you ever need to restore backup, it would be a full restore. So we're not offering, at the moment at least, we don't offer the possibility to flick through a backup archive and look for individual cases. You would have to restore the whole lot and then basically look for your cases. If you're using Communicate and if you're sending all your cases to external labs, then all your cases are available on Communicate as well, as we don't delete any cases sent through Communicate. So whatever you're sending through Communicate remains on our servers indefinitely. And that would allow you, if your system breaks down, to just new dental desktop installation and basically sync all your data back from Communicate onto your local device. And you can determine how far back in time you want to restore those cases. So those are the two options that we have right now when it comes to backing up and restoring data.
Okay. So anybody found a geek name actually for Jan? I don't think we have any chat comments on Jan's geek name. I think some of you might have a good geek name for Jan. Put it in the chat. I just want to launch a small poll for you guys, and it will appear on your screen now. And I hope that as many of you will answer it, and it doesn't matter if you're an end user or not a user yet. Just let us know how you normally would find information when you have issues with or questions for Trias software and so forth. And I'll share the results as soon as I at least have 75%. Otherwise, the Geek webinar will stop now. So it's just for fun. We already have almost 50% answering. And I will launch the next question while you are filling in the poll. So I guess, Jan, this is a question for you. Is there a way to align preparation scan in Byte and then use that to align the scans?
So if it's possible to align the pre-preparation scan, yes, you can. Everybody, you know, when you're starting the scanning with the Trios, you have the workflow. It usually starts with the lower, then the upper, and then the Byte. As soon as we are adding some kind of indication like a crown prep or something like that, we get a number 4 as well. So then we have 4 scan, let's say, areas to cover. So to be able to use the pre-prep, we add that in the order form as well. So we mark the button pre-prep, and then we will have 4 steps in our scan workflow. And then we will start with the lower, let's say, as usual, and nothing happens there. But then in the upper, where we have our preparation, we will then scan the pre-prep, the tooth without any work done on it. And then before going to the prepared tooth, we will actually go and scan the Byte first. So we will jump 1 step forward, and that will then be the new, let's say, Byte relation we have. And then we go back and we scan the prepared tooth. That way we will align the Byte to the pre-preparation, not to the prepared tooth. So this is a tongue wiggler because it's easy to get it wrong. So let's give them numbers. So number 1 is lower, number 2 is normally upper, and number 3 is Byte. And when we add the crown prep, we have a number 4 as well. So instead of scanning 1, 2, 3, 4, we actually scan 1, 2, 4, 3. So we take the Byte before we do the final prep scan. Then we align to the pre-prep. So
Sure.
Easy when you get it and when you think about it. So just try it next time you do a preparation scan. Do 1, 2, 4, 3. Thank
Super.
you.
Oh, there must be a good geek name for Jan. It's impossible that there's not a good geek name. Bring it on. I'm going to share you the results so you can all see what your colleagues or peers out there are using as help when they get stuck with Trias or any type of intraoral scanning. So YouTube, 51% actually choose YouTube, which is also a really good go-to place. And 0% says, oh, maybe it's because I spelled it wrongly, but I never have questions. But I guess most people read it as questions. And a lot go to 3Shape community. That's really nice to see, and also to the .com site. Thank you very much for your sharing of that as well. So moving on, and I can see there's a lot of questions coming in. Keep them coming. There's a question in regards to someone has only one TRIOS scanner. They have multiple chairs in their office. Every dentist already has their own name in the TRIOS scanner, which I guess would be in the TRIOS software. However, a person wants to communicate with the lab online. Does this person need to give the dongle number to access to 3Shape Communicate?
So there's multiple users within the clinic that have their own account within Dental Desktop, sent to a lab, and they want to communicate with the lab.
Yes.
Okay. There is two kind of ways how you can handle it within your clinic. One possibility is that you create a communicate account that is shared by everyone, and then everyone should ideally have the username and the password so they can log onto the web portal and leave messages to the lab. And the other possibility is that everyone creates his own 3Shape Communicate account. They don't need to all enter the same or different dongle numbers, that you can just go to the platform, create a clinic account under Communicate, but that means they all have to basically connect with the labs that they're sending to. And in that way, everybody has his own credentials and can connect with the labs that they've sent cases to. And it pretty much depends for each clinic which setup is preferred, how much they want to share the data amongst each other. And both sides have benefits, and we don't have any recommendation what we say is best. Everybody can just choose.
Okay. Thank you, Chief Hacker. So there's also a question here. TRIOS 3 needs 3D calibration every 7th day. How is it being done in TRIOS 4? As I did not figure out any 3D calibration request from the software. And I guess this would be a good question for our software expert, Christian.
Yes, I can answer that. Yeah, so one of the new things in our TRIOS 4 is the new smart tips. And basically that have allowed us to change how we do calibration of the scanners. And it means two things. First of all, we actually do the 3D calibration and the color calibration at the same time, which we were not able to do for TRIOS 3 and previous. And on the other hand, you will notice that you don't have the same frequency of calibration, and that's because with the smart tips we know exactly what tip you have on, and therefore you can say tailor the calibration scheme towards the tip instead of just the scanner.
Super, good question. So Christian, Dominic, Jan, are there any questions that you have marked as good to answer live?
Yeah, I have two more, I think. Should I just go ahead here?
Yes, please.
Yeah, one of just on my screen here. So the question is, what is the use of protect from cleanup? Is there any validity for it? And yes, there definitely is. We're a little bit back to what happens to a case if you don't post-process it. So when you're scanning a case, you generate some huge files on your hard drive. And when you post-process it, you take all this data and you create these DCM files, the final models. And at some point, we would like to remove these huge files from the hard drive. Otherwise, you will fill up your hard drive quite fast. So this is what we call cleanup. If you have a case where you know, okay, this case I know I want to continue scanning on in the future, beyond the normal cleanup frequency, which is 45 days, by the way, then you can protect the case from cleanup. And that means the system will never touch the original scan files for this case. Yeah, and you can scan on it in whatever distant future you want.
Super. So Jan, do you have any of the questions coming in that would be relevant to share as well?
There are some questions, a few of them actually targeting the two, let's say, possibilities we have when we are taking the bite. If we are using the, let's say, normal alignment, or the, let's say, the adjusted or non-adjusted bite. So let's go into that and really dig down, because this one is really at the bottom of the geek well. So again, when we are looking at the model and we are taking the normal bite for a normal patient, let's say, they have a nice stable bite. And when we take this impression with an alginate or silicone or something, and we send it to the laboratory, there might be a small problem with the gypsum model itself. So what technicians have learned in the laboratory is actually to take the two gypsum models, put them together and grind them a little bit to get this deep and nice and steady bite of the bite relation, let's say, of the gypsum models. So that we have learned to do also in the software. So if, let's say, a patient is biting down a little bit too soft, not going down all the way on the facets and the surfaces, we can actually do that in the software, grinding down so we have a nice and stable bite. The problem is that when we have a patient with let's say, mobile teeth or even loose teeth, like a patient with only the front remaining, or if we have a periodontosis patient, doing that would actually bite down too hard. So for that, we have a setting so we can adjust so the bite stops at first contact instead. So in the settings, we are calling it adjusting for intersections and no adjustments. The intersections here meaning that if you're biting down too hard, we can actually, when we turn the model around, see the teeth from the opposite jaw going through the 3D model. That would be a bite that is then too hard. So for that, we can press the align button and we can go to first contact, just reach, let's say, the first tooth in the mouth. Tricky question. We can elaborate more on it. Let's again recommend one of the webinars we actually have recorded already, where we also show images, how this works. I think Morten will touch on this also in his tips and tricks with the two settings. I'm getting a nod there. So please sign up for that one, and he will show some images as well. Then it's even clearer than when I presented it now. So thank you.
Super. I am just going to launch a small new poll for you, and I hope that you are going to answer it. The answer rate last time was really high, so I hope that this will be as well. So launching the poll, and you should be able to see it on your screens now. I'm just giving you a few seconds to go through it. So I hope as many of you will answer the poll. We have a question coming in as well, and it sounds like this. I would like to know what would be the disadvantage in the experience if we use a laptop with onboard graphic card instead of a dedicated one. And maybe our chief hacker Dominic can answer this one.
I actually think Christian might be more suited.
Oh, Christian.
Yeah, I can do that. Well, basically, it would work on a onboard graphics card. Some of our own, say, dedicated hardwares, the older cards, only have a onboard graphics card basically, but and they still work. The thing is, a dedicated graphics card is just much more powerful. Especially we are targeting the ones from NVIDIA, and you can say these days it's more and more common to use the graphics card to do calculations as well. So it's not only visualizing the models on screen. So it's not only a graphics card, sounds a lot for the graphics, but we actually do a lot of calculations on the graphics card as well. So you would get you would benefit in the scanning experience by just, we say, sheer performance.
Super.
Yep.
So, Dominic, have you gathered any good questions? The reason for me asking this is I can see there's similar questions coming in as well, and maybe we can sum some of them up.
Mostly was actually smaller, very specific follow-up questions on the previous topics. I don't think there was anything super relevant that I've come across. One thing maybe worth mentioning is we get a lot of questions popping in, guys. So if you keep posting your questions twice, the list gets even longer and longer, and it's hard to follow up. So we will try to answer everything, maybe not right now, but we'll also stay a little bit after the call, but be patient. We're scrolling through and we get to them.
It's like sitting like this.
Yes.
I have a few marked if I...
So there's actually one here, Christian. Would it lower my calculation speed of Trios 3 card if my shade measurements opens again?
Yes, that was one of them I spotted, and I will take it together with one while asking, will turning off color while scanning increase speed on scanner, or is it irrelevant? So you can say basically a lot of these features you can toggle on and off to visualize things, and that would be this overlay we have for shade measurement or the color itself. It will always be done in the background when you're scanning, even though you're not visualizing it. So it basically do not affect your performance. And while we are especially with the color, then it's purely a visualization thing happening on the screen. It does not affect your scanning performance. It does not make it easier to scan shiny surfaces or anything.
Okay, super. And Dominic, did you have some of them gathered?
Nope.
There are some really heavy ones on implant scanning, Jan. I guess you would be the geek that can answer those.
Can you read them out loud?
Yeah, I'll find it. Keeps disappearing on me here.
While you are looking, I will take the opportunity to answer a question about communication. How can we transfer the case to third party except the laboratory and the person who has the scanner? And of course, as you all know, the communication between you and the laboratory is encrypted, and you need to be friends, like Trios friends or Facebook friends. So no one else can peek in and look at what you are transferring there. But there is a possibility to add one more, let's say, viewer. That could be the specialist or the doctor or a colleague that you want to send a referral to, or just to get tips and tricks from. And then you can add them into the same loop, adding them also in your Communicate account. But that means that they need to have a Trios and a license and so on to be able to open the case, maybe the Smile design or an implantology case or whatever we are sending here. If it is a patient or let's say a doctor that doesn't have a Trios product, they can actually also open a communicate account, and you can send images and cases to them. But then they will have to watch them in communicate on the computer. Or in the 3Shape app that also is available for Android and iPhone, they can download the My 3Shape, and then you can share the scan with them there, also a smile design and so on. So a lot of possibilities to share the knowledge, the quality of the images, of course, and also to use each other as specialists when it comes to 3Shape scans and software.
Okay, so actually to maybe start up a bit soft up into the implant questions, Jan, how can you scan the bite if there are no pre-molars or molars? Do you have any tips and tricks as for reference points, for instance?
Let me dig down into my bag that I had next to me here. Let's see if I can
You're
find
really well
something.
prepared.
Yeah, I
Nice.
thought there might be some questions on this. So I take my small 3Shape pen here, and I can show you that if you don't have any teeth on one side, let's say scanning for the bite and so on, then we can of course start the scan for the bite already on the tooth that we have, let's say the canine or the first premolar or something like that. If we don't have anything else at all in between, we can add a jig in between. We can add some silicone material, wax, or something else that will be fixated and that will hold the bite stable. When the patient is biting down on this, the jig will be the teeth, let's say. It will work as the teeth in between. And then when we scan the bite, it will lock to that one, but also we need to add the soft tissue. Because from our first scan, the lower jaw, we scan the soft tissue. From the upper jaw, we scan the soft tissue. We have the jig to stabilize the bite, and then when we scan the bite, we add the soft tissue, we go down and we add the soft tissue from the lower jaw, and then it will be perfect there.
Okay, super. Thank you very much for those tips. I am going to share the end the poll and share the results if anybody's curious about those. So we have 36% that would use the scanner only as a substitute of manual impressions, thereby meaning that they wouldn't use it for any other purpose than taking or replacing manual impressions. Of course, there are some that are not end users, which makes it obvious that they don't use it for that. Then we have a lot of people that know smile design and also patient monitoring as well, which is very nice. And if any of you have not seen either smile design or patient monitoring, it's actually available in your software package unless you have bought a Trias 3 Basic. But smile design, treatment simulator, and patient monitoring are already available for most of you. And I'm actually not aware what Trias diagnose and Trias scan alignment is, but I guess some do. Then, we have 70% actually that are using the excitement apps, whereof 13 actually do not own a scanner or end users, which is a very high percentage. So that is really nice as well. And are following actually this webinar, there's a really small survey letting us know how the webinar is, of course, and also with a free field comment where you can also add if you have any questions, or also if you have any topics that could, for instance, be on the excitement apps or other things that you want us to touch upon in this type of webinar as well. Then we have some scan speed. What do people accept as a good scan speed? So 40%, so the majority would expect it to be less than 2 minutes. And we have 4% that says 10 seconds for a full and lower jaw scan. Morten Røde, did you answer this this survey? I'm suspicious you did. It's very seldom that people can actually scan that fast, even on a model. But yeah. Then the next result, we have 45% saying that it is mature, the trias and software, but it still needs to be improved, which is very nice, because that is what our colleagues and also a lot from this geek panel is working with every day as well. So thank you very much for joining in on the poll. And that was actually my last poll, so I won't bother you with that again. Kirsten, you said that you had collected some of the questions, or else I can pitch you some.
I just have one left right now. Is there a limit to the number of 3D images during a scan / maximum images, as when we cross 3000 it makes a sound? So it's also a really good question. So yeah, as I mentioned before, we are accumulating all this data while you scan, and then we post-process it at the end. And basically, we keep all this data that you are scanning to create the best possible model at the end. So it's really hard for us to throw anything away while you are doing your scan, because there's always something that's a little bit different or a little bit new. So yeah, especially now that you have a better hardware, and the software keeps improving, and it's quite easy to get a lot of these images. So what actually matters is this total sum of images from your whole case, and also not every case is the same. So we have a hard time predicting the actual limit of these images, and you can also say that on a modern PC and with the correct setting, then you'll be able to scan quite a lot more than when we start showing the warning. But in effect, you would start to see it like that your post-processing, for example, would be slower and so on. So we recommend trying to wrap up your scan in these, I can't remember, 2,500 or 3,000 images. But no, we don't have a hard limit where we basically just stop and say you cannot scan any further.
Okay, super. From our silent partner, Mr. Speed Scanner Morten Røde, I have a small it's not an excuse, but it's a sorry, because of course we'll try to answer all of the questions, also the ones in writing, but there's a lot of questions and really a lot of good ones that needs an elaborate answer. So we will try to, of course, do our best in answering during the webinar, but afterwards we'll, of course, also in the material you get, make sure that you'll get it all in writing, so all of the answers as well. So don't despair if you don't get an answer during the webinar. So and Morten is smiling now. I can see. It's busy in the keyboard end. So Dominic, do you have any questions compiled from the Q&A? Yeah.
No, there's been a few smaller questions, such as if it is possible to export several cases in one go, or just individual cases. And there are unfortunately the answers that you can only export one case at a time. So we don't currently offer the possibility to select 10, 20 cases and export them all in one go. Then there's been a few questions about connectivity. I think there was a question about having two scanners, and when scanning at the same time, you're getting connectivity issues. That may depend a little bit on the setup. In general, it is possible to, I mean, we've seen it and we've tested it, that scanning with 10 or more TRIA scanners simultaneously is absolutely doable. So if you're scanning with 2 or 3 scanners at the same time and you're experiencing issues, then it is most likely not related to our software, but more probably related to something with the setup in itself. So it could be a poor network connectivity between the client and the server, like if you're running on a very old Wi-Fi standard. It could also be that if you're using 2 wireless scanners, that they're happening to be on the same Wi-Fi channels as each other or as the local network, and you have a lot of interference there. So there can be many causes for a slowdown in the client server setup. But again, I would say 10 simultaneous connections, in some cases even more, is definitely achievable. I'm working with several places that are running that kind of setup without issues. So if you have any issues with that, I recommend you reach out to our customer care team and have them connect to those devices and investigate what the root cause could be.
Dominic, I could see something in that question that caught my eye. It says that they are using 2 dongles. Could that have something to do with the problem? Because we are saying that when we're using the server connection, we are always placing 1 dongle in the server, not 1 dongle in every scanner. Could that, let's say, be the problem?
No, you're right. It does seem a bit confusing, because you also mentioned that it is a client server setup based on which I put my question, but the 2 dongles, ideally they should be converted into 1 dongle and placed into the server. If it would be that there's 2 dongles with different licenses, then he would likely get a software issue saying that it doesn't have enough client points he wants to scan simultaneously. So it might just be a mix-up in the way the question is posed. But in general, yes, if you have 2 standalone scanners in your clinic and you wish to convert this into a client server setup, then you have to reach out to your sales contact and get those licenses from the 2 dongles merged onto 1, because the server works only with 1 device.
Super. And actually now, as Dominic mentioned it, there are a lot of our resellers and sales out there that is really well equipped to support you both with this, and also a lot of the general questions also, and also some of the geek questions as well. So this would be a really good first try to get your answers as well. I have this implant question, Jan. So can I scan my implant crown temporary in the same case to copy the emergence profile to send to the lab for abutment fabrication?
Again, please.
Can I scan my implant crown temporary in the same case to copy the emergence profile to send to the lab for abutment fabrication?
Yes, you can. So when you are setting up your order, you have a lot of options. You have emergence profile, but you also have pre-prep. So by marking both of them so they are active, you will actually get 5 scan steps when you come to scan with your trios. So the lower, the pre-scan first, there you have your temporary. Then you remove the temporary. Then you scan the emergence profile. Then you jump to the next one where you have the scan body, and then finally the bite. So everything in 5 nice steps. Just remember to activate both emergence profile and pre-prep.
Super. Jan, there's also a question in regards to if you have any tips and tricks on scanning, for instance, metal or gold in the mouth.
Yeah, that is a problem. Let's say we are meeting a lot when scanning, and not so much for gold, let's say, because that is getting more and more unusual. But for amalgam fillings, for dentures, where the clasps and also the framework might be metal and so on. So the problem for the scanner is where it's shiny. So you can see it also now in my glasses when I'm looking into the light. I have these shiny areas. And for the scanner itself, when the light from the scanner reflects and hits back, it looks all white and it's difficult to see what is what. The first thing you can do is then, after you have scanned your shiny areas, let's say, turn off the color, the surface texture, and look at the black and white scan and see if everything is there. If the surface is nice and smooth, let's say the STL that we call it is nice and fulfilled, then everything is perfect. Then you don't have to bother about that. If there is a problem with the surface as well, try to decrease the glossiness of that area by adding some kind of, let's say, material. Remove the saliva first, because that gives a lot of glossiness. Then you can smear something on that area. For example, cheap toothpaste. A perfect way to do that. It removes some of the glossiness, and then it's also easier to scan. We could see that on some third-party scan bodies in the beginning when they were very white, let's say, and shiny. Then we just added some toothpaste to it, and then it worked nice as well. We don't use powder, so nothing like that, but just something to take the shine off it. Then it works well.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. So, Christian, you look like you're thinking very hard. Is there a good question coming?
Yeah, well, it's just a small one. Can we use insane mode on Trios 2 as well? And the short answer is yes, you can. So a lot of our features that we're developing the software is actually more related to the PC you're running on and not so much on the scanner. Of course, the Trios 4 scanner, for example, have some new features from the scanner side, but our software features, insane mode, AI scan, and patient-specific motion is more dependent on your PC. So all these features are also supported for Trios 2.
Super. So that was a definitive yes. A new question. One is asking, I still need some clarification on the bites with the adjustments versus without the adjustments. So what are the differences and what would help the doctor decide? So what would decide what preferences they have, whether or not to adjust it?
So to make this even, let's say, or very easy, so if you have stable teeth, then you should use the normal, let's say, setting just for intersections. Or you can also use, if you have mobile teeth, you can click the align button or adjust button in the bottom or after the scan, and you can see how the scan changes its position. Then you can actually determine with the naked eye what looks best for you. That is the, let's say, easy way to do it. The more technical way is to look how far you are biting down into the cusps on the surfaces of the teeth. So if you are sliding down and you have a deep bite, then you should beware of that the crowns can be low, and that could cause a problem. But if it's a stable, let's say, relatively stable bite, then you can stay at the default setting as you're having in the scanner or the software already.
Okay, super. So there's one asking the possibility of knowing undercut areas of disability after the preparation process with the Trios scan. Can I get a clear margin when I scan with the Trios? So how can they get a good margin line if they have this undercut area?
So the good thing with the Trios is that it can look and it can see everything you can see with the naked eye. So if you have an undercut area, you can always, let's say, tilt the scanner and also see that area. The problem is when the lab technician is, or yourself in Trios Design Studio, are creating the crown, it will not fit perfectly, because then you will have a lot of cement filling that area because it was an undercut. So by using the let's say the extra step that we have in Trios after scanning, we have the validation steps where we can look at the undercuts. We can see the margin line and see if we can present it to the lab technician and so on. By using those tools, we can actually see if there is an undercut and then go in and remove it from the preparation itself. So the tools are there to help and to avoid errors before it's sent to the laboratory or to our chairside designing software as well.
Okay, so you say that the scanner can see exactly what you can also see with your naked eye. That fits very well with the next question. So if you're scanning multiple implants on an edentulous arch, is there any way to increase the depth of the scanning so that you can actually capture more of the scan body?
So here we can, if I get back to my scan body that I had before, when we are scanning the position of the implant with the scan body, we can, let's see, where is it? There it is. We need to capture a certain part of the scan body to have it aligned accurately in the software. So we say it's the top part, let's say 50% of the top. So we know where we are. You can see that this special scan body from 3Shape, it has, it's very difficult to see, but it has different edges and grooves and tabs, which makes it very easy to align in the software. So those parts we need to present to the scanner, and so it will be captured and then sent along to the laboratory. It's not actually necessary to get the bottom part of the scan body, because you had that, the soft tissue and everything, when you scan the emergence profile already, or the first scan before removing the healing cap. So it's the top part that is necessary to get. But as you are tilting the scanner, you can actually see the side part of the scan body as well. So let's say we have the scan body and then you want to see the side of it, then you can scan from the side and you go over the top and you scan from the other side up to the top again, from the front and from the back side of the scan body. So all four sides is important to capture, and of course the top part is the most important one.
Super. So touching now upon these edentulous scans, so can you do this with just a single impression? Is that enough? Or by what is your tip on this one?
So with the edentulous, when we're scanning, they say, or even if it's for dentures or it's for implants or some other mock-up, let's say as design, smile design, maybe with dentures and so on, we need to follow the scan strategy of edentulous, and this is to capture all the soft tissue that is there. Because the laboratory, they need to see the soft tissue as if it was in a normal silicone or alginate impression. They need to see all the sides. So we cannot leave anything out. But as soon as you have learned the scan strategy for edentulous, it is quite easy, let's say, to capture. So for upper jaw, it's medium hard. You need, it's not, let's say, maybe it's as easy as scanning for teeth. Let's see if I can get Morten to nod for this one, if he agrees. So edentulous upper jaw, as easily as scanning for teeth, yes. Yes, but lower jaw, of course, you need to be a specialist. You need to have control of the soft tissue, to hold the tongue, to hold the lip, and so on. So lower jaw is more tricky. It needs more training, but it's doable because a lot of colleagues are doing it out there. Denturists and dentists working with fully digital workflows for dentures. And of course, if you can scan for a denture, then scanning for a full implant bridge is as easy, of course.
Super. So Dominic, have there been any questions for a good hacker?
I believe there's one that I've marked. Let me find it. Yes, so there was one question about when seeing a standard desktop frequently receives updates that we're installing. Someone is asking if it is also important to keep Windows updated and the graphic cards driver updated. And if we even go that far to recommend to buy a new laptop from time to time. And here I would say that there is no definite perfect reply or way to go about this. In principle, if your scanner works and you don't experience any issues, then I don't see any reason why you have to upgrade anything. If you're concerned about security when it comes to Windows, for example, then yes, if you install the latest security patches for Windows, you can do that. We do also test for compatibility with Windows security patches. We would inform if there's any issues, or we would at least at the same time also provide the hotfix rather quickly if there are any issues based on that. When it comes to the graphic cards, if you're running it on a notebook or on a desktop PC, then yes, you can always install the latest GeForce drivers. If you're running a Move or a card, I don't think it is necessary, again, as long as everything works fine, but there's also no harm in doing so. And I believe that getting a new laptop should be the last resort, only at the point where you really have exhausted every other possibilities. And I, for example, at my desk have a notebook that is like 5 years old and everything still works perfectly well. And some people are using our Trios cards that are, 8 years old by now? And with the right configurations, they work perfectly well with the latest dental desktop software and the latest scanners. So I would recommend not to run out and buy a new hardware device, but rather, yeah, update whatever you feel necessary.
Super. So even though being a geek, you don't need the newest hardware to run dental desktop. That's nice to know. So another question, how can we transfer the case to a third party, except the laboratory and the person who has the scanner? So that's a collaboration thing as well, Jan.
Yeah, that was the question I answered about communicate and so on. So that one popped up there again. So rewind.
I have started to repeat myself.
Yeah.
Maybe a question can help me out of this like pain dive I'm in now.
Oh,
do you have any questions, Gavin?
Yes, I have one. What could go wrong if we don't flip the tip of the scanner while scanning the upper arch? And yeah, basically that's also very typical, say, misunderstanding or lack of communication from our side. Absolutely nothing. It's perfectly fine to not flip the tip, or flip the tip for lower jaw, for example.
Super.
Yep.
So are there any other good questions here? Keeps coming, I see. There is a question in regards to calibration tips, the color calibration. Is there an expiry date on the color calibration? That must not be the tips, but the targets, I guess.
Yeah.
So Christian, could you answer this in regards to when to replace a calibration color target? Finally, we found something.
Yeah, it is. I must admit that's not very software related.
Okay.
But no, but of course, I can tell you what I know. Is not covering everything, but the color calibration target, especially the side where you have all the small colored dots, they're produced by a company basically living of doing these very accurate colors, and a small patch with colors in our color calibration target is basically like any other colors you have in your daily life. They fade over time, and especially in sunlight. That's also why you really have to keep them in this little protective box that they're shipped with, and don't have them lying around on your desk. I think, and that's also so from the manufacturer of these small patches, we get an expiry date, and we since it's something that affects the scanner, we have to have this expiry date on it. It's not like the scanner will get less accurate geometrical wise, but it can affect how nice the colors look. I'm not sure exactly how we officially handle the expiry date, but that's the technical reason behind it.
So I found a good question for you, Dominic. I don't hope that I asked it previously as well. So if you export scans from dental desktop and you want to send it to another design software program, are there any errors in the percentage in accuracy that you get when you import it to another program?
Yeah, I think I saw this question that was in relation to a different CAD software where they wanted to use it. No. So when you scan with a Trios scanner, you always scan with the same quality. And whether you're sending this case to 3Shape Communicate, whether you're exporting it to DCM, PLY, or STL, it always remains in the same quality. So no matter what file format you use, technically speaking, we're always saving the same amount of polygons in your scan. And some of them have texture added, some don't. So it does not matter how you get the data out of our system, the quality remains steady. What happens in the third-party software, what they do with it, that is out of our control. So I can't comment on if they're, for example, downsizing the resolution or anything like that, which I doubt. But again, from our system, no, it has no difference whatsoever.
Super.
I do have another one lined up. Someone was asking about wireless connectivity on, I believe, their cards. So just to touch on that, if you're having an older model of our Trios cards, there are older Wi-Fi dongles in it, which are not as performant as dongles that you can get nowadays. And traditionally, when you were using the old Trios Classic software, where you're basically just scanning a case and sending it to Communicate, or even if you're doing this right now with Trios and Dental Desktop, then you would probably not notice a big difference or impact from this, not obsolete, but older hardware. But if you're intending to change to a server-client architecture, then some people did experience performance issues due to the old Wi-Fi adapter in those old trees. And if this is the case, then you can reach out to our customer support and they can inform you which dongles we're currently installing in newer models. I believe it's the Linksys W USB 600M that we're putting in those devices. Which goes into the Trios Move and also in the new Trios. That one has much higher connectivity and it's fairly easy to replace it yourself in a Trios card, and you're not losing your warranty either if you're just replacing the back panel. So again, if you're experiencing any Wi-Fi connectivity issues, reach out to customer support and they can advise you what you can do about that.
Sure. Thank you, Dominic. And just letting you all know that currently 87% of the answers have been given by Morten. I think he's quite exhausted, but I can also see that that Christian also now have a question he wants to answer live.
Yeah, I can just. There's a couple of questions coming in on speed and hardware. So first, does excessive data or large files affect the speed of the scanner? And yeah, I think as Morten also wrote, the insane mode scan engine is to large extent completely unaffected by the amount you're scanning. You'll get a performance hit when you stop scanning for the post-processing afterwards. But while you're scanning, you should just be able to scan normally all the way through. So if you're using the old scanning engine, which we don't recommend, then you would have a gradual decrease of scanning performance. The other one is what hardware segment creates the biggest improvement of performance of Dental Desktop client performance? CPU, RAM, graphics, hard disk speed, etc. So I think it also depends on what you mean with Dental Desktop client performance. So for the scanning, when you're in the middle of the scanning process with your patient, then it's actually just the two most important things are the CPU and the graphics card. Your overall system performance, stuff like bus speed and memory speed also have an impact. But if you have a a good CPU and a good graphics card, then you have come a long way. While you're scanning, the hard disk speed is almost of no importance. But it will, if for example, if you're not running on a SSD disk, you will feel it in your daily work for sure. Yep.
Super. And I can also see some questions piled up for Jan as well.
So we have one good question that is about how to, let's say, show the margin line if you have a deep preparation. So what we often recommend is that we use double chord to present the margin line for the scanner, as the scanner only sees what we can see. So the normal technique that we used with silicon impression, that we fill the, let's say, the sulcus or the margin line with material and then hope that the tray will push everything away to give us a nice impression. It doesn't work with the scanner, so we need to open up and we need to present the margin line to the scanner itself, and we can do that with double chord. For example, Ultradent 00 and 2. You place the 00 in the bottom, and then you place the 2 on top with some kind of chemical, maybe a Stringident or something else, that will sit there for a while you are scanning the lower jaw, for example. And then you remove the upper chord, dry the area, and then you scan the margin line perfectly. It's very easy to get done. If it's too deep, you can always use some kind of, let's say, removal technique like laser or Exposil, for example, to push out and expand the let's say, pocket even more to make it visible for the scanner to see. Also, one nice trick that is a trios only is that as we are able to lock the surface when we have scanned a specific area, you can actually hold out the soft tissue with an instrument. For example, the cord packer that we are using, the small shovel, we hold it out so we can look down and see the margin line. We dry the area and we scan the margin line there, and then we stop the scan and we lock that area so nothing will happen. Even if we let go, it will not collapse on top of the scan. And then we scan the rest. Same thing you can do if the cord is popping up on some area and so on. You can always lock what is good. You can trim away what has popped up and you rescan that small area again. So you never have to redo a full, let's say, difficult scan again. So a lot of tools out there or in the software that we can use to make the scan of margin lines easy, even if they are very deep.
Super. There's also a question here, Jan, in regards to if you have any suggestions to know of a protocol for scanning for a new crown, but in this specific case for an existing partial denture. So can this person scan the internal surface of the partial denture, or what is the recommended way of doing it?
Again, here working with the pre-prep, getting, let's say, the occlusion first. We can also then scan let's say, before, with and without the partial denture. That way, the technician, by moving and playing with these two scans, can actually remove the denture in the software and also seeing the existing crown there already. So he knows how big it should be, how hard the contact should be, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So this means that you can actually adapt a partial denture to an existing crown, which is almost impossible if you do it with a normal silicone impression.
Mm. So talking about contact points and making a good fit, there's been some questions in regards to patient-specific motion. So the more or less recording of the grinding pattern of the patient. Christian, can you elaborate a bit about this in regards to how both the best way to take that recording and also how it's being used?
I think I would actually maybe Jan can answer how to best take it. I can say how it's being used. It's our Design Studio app and our dental system is able to receive the data that you record in this patient-specific motion function, and then they're able to play it back and then see the contacts that this playback has recorded, and then they can adapt their design of the crown, for example, to this motion. But exactly how to best capture this information, I would leave that to Jan.
So as many of you have been using or are using the community and also YouTube for this, you actually have a fantastic video with Morten showing that. And that is actually the trick behind it. So you scan upper, lower, and bite. You don't make the bite area too small. Let's say adding 4 teeth at least if you have a full dentition. Also some soft tissue and so on. So we have the bite area that we are scanning a little bit bigger. Then in the 4th step, the software will ask us to go back to that area. The trick there is to have a little bit of distance between the tip and the teeth. So we are not, let's say, on the tooth or on the teeth, but actually having a little bit of distance, pulling the cheek a little bit out. For the scanner, then in step number 4, to again see the same bite that we already took, but now with motion. So the scanner and the software will show a green area where we are supposed to hover, let's say, with the tip, and then we ask the patients to do the movements that will be recorded, and then we can replay them as well. Then it's important as a dentist or as the person scanning to, let's say, train this with the patient before you do it the first time, because it will feel different when you're doing it with the tip inside the mouth. They need to have full contact when they are doing it all the time, and not to, let's say, exaggerate the movements. So normally when you are doing a lateral movement, protrusion to the left side, you would slide up onto the canine cusp, and there is where you should stop. You should not go over the edge and try to go as far as possible, but actually just to edge, and then slide back down into normal occlusion again, MTR on the other side, protrusion and retrotrusion and so on. So nice and controlled movements, always in full contact and not exaggerate. Then you have perfect use of that, both in Trios Design Studio and of course in Dental System as well.
Super. So we only have a couple of minutes left. Are there any closing questions from your side, Dominic?
There's one I came across about whether it's possible to merge 2 Trios Classic systems. And if you're still running your devices on Trios Classic and you want to combine them into a client-server architecture, then yes, that is possible. By converting one of them into a Trios and Dental Desktop setup, and then merging the other Trios Classic installations into that architecture. If you have already converted various standalone devices into Trios and Dental Desktop, then currently we don't offer any functionality of merging those. Let me see if there was a different one that I marked.
I think
there was a question about, yeah.
Oh, you just received a follow-up question from Ankesh.
Let me just read it. Okay. Yeah, that was someone was asking a question about some people were concerned that when using a wireless setup that they would not receive all of the images captured from scanner to laptop. But I did not fully understand that question. Actually, Christian, I don't know if you have read up on it. I believe it's a wireless scanner and people are being concerned that they're not capturing all images to the device when scanning. Yeah, okay. So I would say in general, there's not really an issue. With a wireless scanner, you're creating like a peer-to-peer network between the laptop and the scanner. So you're not relying on your own Wi-Fi network or internet connection or anything. What can happen, and that's basically the only thing that can affect your performance, is if you are, for example, in downtown in a large city or right next to a train station,
or something where there's a lot of Wi-Fi activity, a lot of Wi-Fi networks, then your Wi-Fi channel can be crowded, and that's why in the software settings you can actually change your channel for your Wi-Fi, your wireless scanner. But I would say it's quite, when that happens, it's quite obvious. You get a quite bad scan experience. I would say in general, because it creates this peer-to-peer network, then the wireless scanning experience is, I would say, as stable as the wired scanner.
So
I think it might be worth mentioning here that you would notice this issue as you're scanning. So it's not afterwards there's suddenly something missing that the patient has left and you notice something's gone. You would literally experience as you're scanning that nothing's happening on the screen.
Yeah.
Super. So we are closing up to the last minute, and there was a question in regards if this webinar is available afterwards, and it is available afterwards, and the Q&A session will also be available as well. So if you have not had the opportunity to have your question answered either from Morten Ryde's keyboard fingers or live during this session, we will of course follow up on your questions and add them to the sheet or contact you directly as well. And further questions can of course also be addressed via the email that you received when you signed up for the webinar. But thank you everybody. Thank you to our guest geek, Jan. Thank you also to our chief hacker, and also to our software geek, Christian, and also to the silent Morten Ryde, our scan master. Thank you everybody for joining. We hope it benefited you. And when I'm ending the meeting, there will be a pop-up with a small questionnaire that I hope that you will click to rate the webinar. Thank you very much. See you.
See you.